I was fired with a longing to ascend the Amazon, also with a longing to open up a trade in coca with all the world. During months, I dreamed that dream, and tried to contrive ways to get to Para and spring that splendid enterprise upon an unsuspecting planet. But all in vain. A person may plan as much as he wants to, but nothing of consequence is likely to come of it until the magician Circumstance steps in and takes the matter off his hands. At last Circumstance came to my help. It was in this way. Circumstance, to help or hurt another man, made him lose a $50 bill in the street, and to help or hurt me made me find it. I advertised the find and left for the Amazon the same day. This was another turning point, another link. Could Circumstance have ordered another dweller in that town to go to the Amazon and open up a world trade in coca on a $50 basis and been obeyed? No, I was the only one. There were other fools there, shoals and shoals of them, but they were not of my kind. I was the only one of my kind. Circumstance is powerful, but it cannot work alone. It has to have a partner. Its partner is man's temperament, his natural disposition. His temperament is not his invention, it is born in him, and he has no authority over it, neither is he responsible for its acts. He cannot change it, nothing can change it, nothing can modify it except temporarily. But it won't stay modified. It is permanent, like the color of the man's eyes and the shape of his ears. Blue eyes are gray in certain unusual lights, but they resume their natural color when that stress is removed. A circumstance that will coerce one man will have no effect upon a man of a different temperament. If Circumstance had thrown the banknote in Caesar's way, his temperament would not have made him start for the Amazon. His temperament would have compelled him to do something with the money, but not that. It might have made him advertise the note and wait. We can't tell. Also, it might have made him go to New York and buy into the government, with results that would leave Tweed nothing to learn when it came his turn. Very well, Circumstance furnished the capital, and my temperament told me what to do with it. Sometimes a temperament is an ass. When that is the case, the owner of it is an ass too, and is going to remain one. Training, experience, association can temporarily so polish him, improve him, exalt him that people will think he is a mule, but they will be mistaken. Artificially he is a mule for the time being, but at bottom he is an ass yet and will remain one. By temperament I was the kind of person that does things, does them, and reflects afterward. So I started for the Amazon without reflecting and without asking any questions. That was more than 50 years ago. In all that time my temperament has not changed, by even a shade. I have been punished many and many a time, and bitterly, for doing things and reflecting afterward, but these tortures have been of no value to me. I still do the thing commanded by circumstance and temperament, and reflect afterward. Always violently. When I am reflecting, on those occasions, even deaf persons can hear me think. I went by the way of Cincinnati and down the Ohio and Mississippi. My idea was to take ship at New Orleans for Para. In New Orleans I inquired and found there was no ship leaving for Para. Also that there never had been one leaving for Para. I reflected. A policeman came and asked me what I was doing, and I told him. He made me move on, and said if he caught me reflecting in the public street again, he would run me in. After a few days I was out of money. Then Circumstance arrived, with another turning point of my life, a new link. On my way down, I had made the acquaintance of a pilot. I begged him to teach me the river, and he consented. I became a pilot. By and by Circumstance came again, introducing the Civil War, this time, in order to push me ahead another stage or two toward the literary profession. The boat stopped running, my livelihood was gone. Circumstance came to the rescue with a new turning point and a fresh link. My brother was appointed secretary to the new territory of Nevada, and he invited me to go with him and help him in his office. I accepted. In Nevada, Circumstance furnished me the silver fever, and I went into the mines to make a fortune, as I supposed. But that was not the idea. The idea was to advance me another step toward literature. For amusement, I scribbled things for the Virginia City Enterprise. One isn't a printer 10 years without setting up acres of good and bad literature, and learning, unconsciously at first, consciously later, to discriminate between the two, within his mental limitations. And meantime he is unconsciously acquiring what is called a style. One of my efforts attracted attention, and the Enterprise sent for me and put me on its staff. And so I became a journalist, another link. By and by Circumstance and the Sacramento Union sent me to the Sandwich Islands for 5 or 6 months, to write up sugar. I did it, and threw in a good deal of extraneous matter that hadn't anything to do with sugar, but it was this extraneous matter that helped me to another link. It made me notorious, and San Francisco invited me to lecture, which I did, and profitably. I had long had a desire to travel and see the world, and now circumstance had most kindly and unexpectedly hurled me upon the platform and furnished me the means. So I joined the Quaker City excursion. When I returned to America, circumstance was waiting on the pier, with the last link, the conspicuous, the consummating, the victorious link. I was asked to write a book, and I did it, and called it The Innocents Abroad. Thus I became at last a member of the Literary Guild. That was 42 years ago, and I have been a member ever since. Leaving the Rubicon incident away back where it belongs, I can say with truth that the reason I am in the literary profession is because I had the measles when I was 12 years old. Chapter 3. Now what interests me, as regards these details, is not the details themselves, but the fact that none of them was foreseen by me, none of them was planned by me. I was the author of none of them. Circumstance, working in harness with my temperament, created them all and compelled them all. I often offered help, and with the best intentions, but it was rejected, as a rule, uncourteously. I could never plan a thing and get it to come out the way I planned it. It came out some other way, some way I had not counted upon. And so I do not admire the human being, as an intellectual marvel, as much as I did when I was young, and got him out of books, and did not know him personally. When I used to read that such and such a general did a certain brilliant thing, I believed it, whereas it was not so. Circumstance did it by help of his temperament. The circumstance would have failed of effect with a general of another temperament. He might see the chance, but lose the advantage by being by nature too slow or too quick or too doubtful. Once General Grant was asked a question about a matter which had been much debated by the public and the newspapers. He answered the question without any hesitancy. General, who planned the march through Georgia? The enemy. He added that the enemy usually makes your plans for you. He meant that the enemy by neglect or through force of circumstances leaves an opening for you, and you see your chance and take advantage of it. Circumstances do the planning for us all, no doubt, by help of our temperaments. I see no great difference between a man and a watch, except that the man is conscious and the watch isn't, and the man tries to plan things and the watch doesn't. The watch doesn't wind itself and doesn't regulate itself. These things are done exteriorly. Outside influences, outside circumstances, wind the man and regulate him. Left to himself, he wouldn't get regulated at all, and the sort of time he would keep would not be valuable. Some rare men are wonderful watches with gold case, compensation balance, and all those things, and some men are only simple and sweet and humble waterberries. I am a waterberry of that kind, some say. A nation is only an individual multiplied. It makes plans and circumstance comes and upsets them, or enlarges them. Some patriots throw the tea overboard, some other patriots destroy a Bastille. The plans stop there, then circumstance comes in, quite unexpectedly, and turns these modest riots into a revolution. And there was poor Columbus. He elaborated a deep plan to find a new route to an old country. Circumstance revised his plan for him, and he found a new world, and he gets the credit of it to this day. He hadn't anything to do with it. Necessarily the scene of the real turning point of my life, and of yours, was the Garden of Eden. It was there that the first link was forged of the chain that was ultimately to lead to the emptying of me into the literary guild. Adam's temperament was the first command the deity ever issued to a human being on this planet, and it was the only command Adam would never be able to disobey. It said, "Be weak, be water, be characterless, be cheaply persuadable." The latter command to let the fruit alone was certain to be disobeyed, not by Adam himself but by his temperament, which he did not create and had no authority over. For the temperament is the man, the thing tricked out with clothes and named man is merely its shadow, nothing more. The law of the tiger's temperament is, "Thou shalt kill." The law of the sheep's temperament is, "Thou shalt not kill." To issue later commands requiring the tiger to let the fat stranger alone, and requiring the sheep to imbue its hands in the blood of the lion, is not worthwhile. For those commands can't be obeyed. They would invite to violations of the law of temperament, which is supreme, and takes precedence of all other authorities. I cannot help feeling disappointed in Adam and Eve. That is, in their temperaments. Not in them, poor helpless young creatures, afflicted with temperaments made out of butter, which butter was commanded to get into contact with fire and be melted. What I cannot help wishing is, that Adam and Eve had been postponed, and Martin Luther and Joan of Arc put in their place, that splendid pair equipped with temperaments not made of butter, but of asbestos. By neither sugary persuasions nor by hell-fire could Satan have beguiled them to eat the apple. There would have been results. Indeed, yes. The apple would be intact today, there would be no human race, there would be no you, there would be no me. And the old creation dawn scheme of ultimately launching me into the literary guild would have been defeated. How to make history dates stick. These chapters are for children, and I shall try to make the words large enough to command respect. In the hope that you are listening and that you have confidence in me, I will proceed. Dates are difficult things to acquire, and after they are acquired it is difficult to keep them in the head. But they are very valuable. They are like the cattle pens of a ranch, they shut in the several brands of historical cattle, each within its own fence, and keep them from getting mixed together. Dates are hard to remember because they consist of figures. Figures are monotonously unstriking in appearance, and they don't take hold, they form no pictures, and so they give the eye no chance to help. Pictures are the thing. Pictures can make dates stick. They can make nearly anything stick, particularly if you make the pictures yourself. Indeed, that is the great point, make the pictures yourself. I know about this from experience. 30 years ago I was delivering a memorized lecture every night, and every night I had to help myself with a page of notes to keep from getting myself mixed. The notes consisted of beginnings of sentences, and were 11 in number, and they ran something like this. In that region the weather. At that time it was a custom. But in California, one never heard. 11 of them. They initialed the brief divisions of the lecture and protected me against skipping. But they all looked about alike on the page, they formed no picture. I had them by heart, but I could never with certainty remember the order of their succession. Therefore I always had to keep those notes by me and look at them every little while. Once I mislaid them, you will not be able to imagine the terrors of that evening. I now saw that I must invent some other protection. So I got 10 of the initial letters by heart in their proper order, I, A, B, and so on, and I went on the platform the next night with these marked in ink on my 10 fingernails. But it didn't answer. I kept track of the fingers for a while, then I lost it, and after that I was never quite sure which finger I had used last. I couldn't lick off a letter after using it, for while they could have made success certain, it would also have provoked too much curiosity. There was curiosity enough without that. To the audience, I seemed more interested in my fingernails than I was in my subject. 1 or 2 persons asked me afterward what was the matter with my hands. It was now that the idea of pictures occurred to me, then my troubles passed away. In 2 minutes I made 6 pictures with a pen, and they did the work of the 11 catch sentences and did it perfectly. I threw the pictures away as soon as they were made, for I was sure I could shut my eyes and see them any time. That was a quarter of a century ago. The lecture vanished out of my head more than 20 years ago, but I could rewrite it from the pictures for they remain. Here are 3 of them. Fig. 1. The first one is a haystack. Below it, a rattlesnake, and it told me where to begin to talk ranch life in Carson Valley. The second one told me where to begin to talk about a strange and violent wind that used to burst upon Carson City from the Sierra Nevadas every afternoon at 2 o'clock and try to blow the town away. The third picture, as you easily perceive, is lightning. Its duty was to remind me when it was time to begin to talk about San Francisco weather, where there is no lightning, nor thunder, either, and it never failed me. I will give you a valuable hint. When a man is making a speech, and you are to follow him, don't jot down notes to speak from, jot down pictures. It is awkward and embarrassing to have to keep referring to notes, and besides it breaks up your speech, and makes it ragged and non-coherent. But you can tear up your pictures as soon as you have made them. They will stay fresh and strong in your memory in the order and sequence in which you scratch them down. And many will admire to see what a good memory you are furnished with, when perhaps your memory is not any better than mine. 16 years ago, when my children were little creatures, the governess was trying to hammer some primer histories into their heads. Part of this fun, if you like to call it that, consisted in the memorizing of the accession dates of the 37 personages who had ruled over England from the Conqueror down. These little people found it a bitter, hard contract. It was all dates, they all looked alike, and they wouldn't stick. Day after day of the summer vacation dribbled by, and still the kings held the fort. The children couldn't conquer any 6 of them. With my lecture experience in mind, I was aware that I could invent some way out of the trouble with pictures, but I hoped a way could be found which would let them romp in the open air while they learned the kings. I found it, and then they mastered all the monarchs in a day or 2. The idea was to make them see the rains with their eyes. That would be a large help. We were at the farm then. From the house porch, the ground sloped gradually down to the lower fence and rose on the right to the high ground where my small workden stood. A carriage road wound through the grounds and up the hill. I staked it out with the English monarchs, beginning with the Conqueror, and you could stand on the porch and clearly see every reign and its length, from the Conquest down to Victoria. Then in the 46th year of her reign, 817 years of English history under your eye at once. English history was an unusually live topic in America just then. The world had suddenly realized that while it was not noticing, the Queen had passed Henry Roman VIII, passed Henry Roman VI, and Elizabeth, and gaining in length every day. Her reign had entered the list of the long ones. Everybody was interested now. It was watching a race. Would she pass the long Edward? There was a possibility of it. Would she pass the long Henry? Doubtful, most people said. The long George? Impossible. Everybody said it. But we have lived to see her leave him 2 years behind. That isn't the shape of the road. I have bunched it up like that to save room. The road had some great curves in it, but their gradual sweep was such that they were no mar to history. No, in our road one could tell at a glance who was who by the size of the vacancy between stakes, with locality to help, of course. Although I am away off here in a Swedish village, and those stakes did not stand till the snow came, I can see them today as plainly as ever. And whenever I think of an English monarch, his stakes rise before me of their own accord, and I notice the large or small space which he takes up on our road. Are your kings spaced off in your mind? When you think of Richard Roman III, and of James Roman II, do the durations of their reigns seem about alike to you? It isn't so to me. I always notice that there's a foot's difference. When you think of Henry Roman III, do you see a great long stretch of straight road? I do. And just at the end where it joins on to Edward I always see a small pear bush with its green fruit hanging down. When I think of the Commonwealth, I see a shady little group of these small saplings which we called the oak parlor. When I think of George Roman III, I see him stretching up the hill, part of him occupied by a flight of stone steps, and I can locate Stephen to an inch when he comes into my mind, for he just filled the stretch which went by the summer house. Victoria's reign reached almost to my study door on the first little summit. There's 16 feet to be added now. I believe that would carry it to a big pine tree that was shattered by some lightning one summer when it was trying to hit me. We got a good deal of fun out of the history road, and exercise too. We trotted the course from the Conqueror to the study, the children calling out the names, dates, and length of reigns as we passed the stakes, going a good gait along the long reigns, but slowing down when we came upon people like Mary and Edward Roman VI, and the short Stuart and Plantagenet, to give time to get in the statistics. I offered prizes, 2 apples. I threw one as far as I could send it, and the child that first shouted the reign it fell in got the apple. The children were encouraged to stop locating things as being over by the arbor, or in the oak parlor, or up at the stone steps, and say instead that the things were in Stephen, or in the Commonwealth, or in George Roman III. They got the habit without trouble. To have the long road mapped out with such exactness was a great boon for me, for I had the habit of leaving books and other articles lying around everywhere, and had not previously been able to definitely name the place, and so had often been obliged to go to fetch them myself, to save time and failure. But now I could name the reign I left them in, and send the children. Next I thought I would measure off the French reigns, and peg them alongside the English ones, so that we could always have contemporaneous French history under our eyes as we went our English rounds. We pegged them down to the 100 Years' War, then threw the idea aside. I do not now remember why. After that we made the English pegs fence in European and American history as well as English, and that answered very well. English and alien poets, statesmen, artists, heroes, battles, plagues, cataclysms, revolutions, we shoveled them all into the English fences according to their dates. Do you understand? We gave Washington's birth to George Roman II, Pegs and his death to George Roman III, George Roman II, got the Lisbon earthquake, and George Roman III, the Declaration of Independence. Goethe, Shakespeare, Napoleon, Savonarola, Joan of Arc, the French Revolution, the Edict of Nantes, Clive, Wellington, Waterloo, Plassey, Patay, Cowpens, Saratoga, the Battle of the Boyne, the invention of the logarithms, the microscope, the steam engine, the telegraph, anything and everything all over the world. We dumped it all in among the English pegs according to its date and regardless of its nationality. If the road pegging scheme had not succeeded, I should have lodged the kings in the children's heads by means of pictures. That is, I should have tried. It might have failed, for the pictures could only be effective when made by the pupil, not the master, for it is the work put upon the drawing that makes the drawing stay in the memory, and my children were too little to make drawings at that time. And besides, they had no talent for art, which is strange, for in other ways they are like me. But I will develop the picture plan now, hoping that you will be able to use it. It will come good for indoors when the weather is bad and one cannot go outside and peg a road. Let us imagine that the kings are a procession, and that they have come out of the ark and down Ararat for exercise, and are now starting back again up the zigzag road. This will bring several of them into view at once, and each zigzag will represent the length of a king's reign. And so on. You will have plenty of space, for by my project you will use the parlor wall. You do not mark on the wall, that would cause trouble. You only attach bits of paper to it with pins or thumbtacks. These will leave no mark. Take your pen now, and 21 pieces of white paper, each 2 inches square, and we will do the 21 years of the conqueror's reign. On each square draw a picture of a whale and write the dates and term of service. We choose the whale for several reasons. Its name and William's begin with the same letter. It is the biggest fish that swims, and William is the most conspicuous figure in English history in the way of a landmark. Finally, a whale is about the easiest thing to draw. By the time you have drawn 21 whales and written, William I, 1066–1087, 21 years, 21 times, those details will be your property. You cannot dislodge them from your memory with anything but dynamite. I will make a sample for you to copy. Fig. 3. I have got his chin up too high, but that is no matter. He is looking for Harold. It may be that a whale hasn't that fin up there on his back, but I do not remember. And so, since there is a doubt, it is best to err on the safe side. He looks better anyway than he would without it. Be very careful and attentive while you are drawing your first whale from my sample and writing the word and figures under it, so that you will not need to copy the sample anymore. Compare your copy with the sample. Examine closely. If you find you have got everything right and can shut your eyes and see the picture and call the words and figures, then turn the sample and copy upside down and make the next copy from memory, and also the next, and so on, always drawing and writing from memory until you have finished the whole 21. This will take you 20 minutes, or 30, and by that time, you will find that you can make a whale in less time than an unpracticed person can make a sardine. Also, up to the time you die you will always be able to furnish William's dates to any ignorant person that inquires after them. Make him spout his water forward instead of backward. Also make him small, and stick a harpoon in him and give him that sick look in the eye. Otherwise you might seem to be continuing the other William, and that would be confusing and a damage. It is quite right to make him small. He was only about a number 11 whale, or along there somewhere. There wasn't room in him for his father's great spirit. The barb of that harpoon ought not to show like that, because it is down inside the whale and ought to be out of sight, but it cannot be helped. If the barb were removed, people would think someone had stuck a whipstock into the whale. It is best to leave the barb the way it is, then everyone will know it is a harpoon and attending to business. Remember, draw from the copy only once. Make your other 12 and the inscription from memory. Now the truth is that whenever you have copied a picture and its inscription once from my sample, and 2 or 3 times from memory, the details will stay with you and be hard to forget. After that, if you like, you may make merely the whale's head and waterspout for the conqueror till you end his reign, each time saying the inscription in place of writing it, and in the case of William Roman II, make the harpoon alone, and say over the inscription each time you do it. You see, it will take nearly twice as long to do the first set as it will to do the second, and that will give you a marked sense of the difference in length of the 2 reigns. That is a hen, and suggest Henry by furnishing the first syllable. When you have repeated the hen and the inscription until you are perfectly sure of them, draw merely the hen's head the rest of the 35 times, saying over the inscription each time. Thus, Fig. 6. That is a steer. The sound suggests the beginning of Stephen's name. I choose it for that reason. I can make a better steer than that when I am not excited, but this one will do. It is a good enough steer for history. The tail is defective, but it only wants straightening out. This hen differs from the other one. He is on his way to inquire what has been happening in Canterbury. Now we arrive at Richard I, called Richard of the Lionheart because he was a brave fighter and was never so contented as when he was leading crusades in Palestine and neglecting his affairs at home. Give him 10 squares of white paper. Fig. 10. That is a lion. His office is to remind you of the lion-hearted Richard. There is something the matter with his legs, but I do not quite know what it is. They do not seem right. I think the hind ones are the most unsatisfactory. The front ones are well enough, though it would be better if they were rights and lefts. That creature is a jamboree. It looks like a trademark, but that is only an accident and not intentional. It is prehistoric and extinct. It used to roam the earth in the old Silurian times, and lay eggs and catch fish and climb trees and live on fossils, for it was of a mixed breed, which was the fashion then. It was very fierce, and the old Silurians were afraid of it, but this is a tame one. Physically, it has no representative now, but its mind has been transmitted. First I drew it sitting down, but have turned it the other way now, because I think it looks more attractive and spirited when one end of it is galloping. I love to think that in this attitude, it gives us a pleasant idea of John coming all in a happy excitement to see what the barons have been arranging for him at Runnymede, while the other one gives us an idea of him sitting down to wring his hands and grieve over it. This is the best one yet. He is on his way, 1265, to have a look at the first House of Commons in English history. It was a monumental event, the situation of the House, and was the second great Liberty landmark which the century had set up. I have made Henry looking glad, but this was not intentional. That is an editor. He is trying to think of a word. He props his feet on the chair, which is the editor's way, then he can think better. I do not care much for this one, his ears are not alike. Still, editor suggests the sound of Edward, and he will do. I could make him better if I had a model, but I made this one from memory. But it is no particular matter. They all look alike anyway. They are conceited and troublesome, and don't pay enough. Edward was the first really English king that had yet occupied the throne. The editor in the picture probably looks just as Edward looked when it was first borne in upon him that this was so. His whole attitude expressed gratification and pride, mixed with stupefaction and astonishment. Another editor. That thing behind his ear is his pencil. Whenever he finds a bright thing in your manuscript, he strikes it out with that. That does him good, and makes him smile and show his teeth, the way he is doing in the picture. This one has just been striking out a smart thing, and now he is sitting there with his thumbs in his vest holes, gloating. They are full of envy and malice, editors are. This picture will serve to remind you that Edward Roman II was the first English king who was deposed. Upon demand, he signed his deposition himself. He had found kingship a most aggravating and disagreeable occupation, and you can see by the look of him that he is glad he resigned. He has put his blue pencil up for good now. He had struck out many a good thing with it in his time. This editor is a critic. He has pulled out his carving knife and his tomahawk and is starting after a book which he is going to have for breakfast. This one's arms are put on wrong. I did not notice it at first, but I see it now. Somehow he has got his right arm on his left shoulder, and his left arm on the right shoulder, and this shows us the back of his hands in both instances. It makes him left-handed all around, which is a thing which has never happened before, except perhaps in a museum. That is the way with art, when it is not acquired but born to you. You start in to make some simple little thing, not suspecting that your genius is beginning to work and swell and strain in secret, and all of a sudden there is a convulsion, and you fetch out something astonishing. This is called inspiration. It is an accident. You never know when it is coming. I might have tried as much as a year to think of such a strange thing as an all-around left-handed man, and I could not have done it. For the more you try to think of an unthinkable thing, the more it eludes you. But it can't elude inspiration. You have only to bait with inspiration and you will get it every time. Look at Botticelli's Spring. Those snaky women were unthinkable, but inspiration secured them for us, thanks to goodness. It is too late to reorganize this editor-critic now. We will leave him as he is. He will serve to remind us. We use the lion again because this is another Richard. Like Edward Roman II, he was deposed. He is taking a last sad look at his crown before they take it away. There was not room enough and I have made it too small, but it never fitted him anyway. Now we turn the corner of the century with a new line of monarchs, the Lancastrian kings. This hen has laid the egg of a new dynasty and realizes the imposing magnitude of the event. She is giving notice in the usual way. You notice I am improving in the construction of hens. At first I made them too much like other animals, but this one is orthodox. I mention this to encourage you. You will find that the more you practice, the more accurate you will become. I could always draw animals, but before I was educated I could not tell what kind they were when I got them done, but now I can. Keep up your courage. It will be the same with you, although you may not think it. This Henry died the year after Joan of Arc was born. Henry v. 9 blue squares. Fig. 18. There you see him lost in meditation over the monument, which records the amazing figures of the Battle of Agincourt. French history says 20,000 Englishmen rout, 0 Frenchmen there, and English historians say that the French loss, in killed and wounded, was 60,000. Henry Roman 6, 39 red squares. Fig. 19. This is poor Henry Roman 6, who reigned long and scored many misfortunes and humiliations. Also 2 great disasters. He lost France to Joan of Arc, and he lost the throne and ended the dynasty which Henry Roman 4 had started in business with such good prospects. In the picture we see him sad and weary and downcast, with the scepter falling from his nerveless grasp. It is a pathetic quenching of a sun which had risen in such splendor. That is a society editor, sitting there elegantly dressed, with his legs crossed in that indolent way, observing the clothes the ladies wear, so that he can describe them for his paper and make them out finer than they are and get bribes for it and become wealthy. That flower which he is wearing in his buttonhole is a rose, a white rose, a York rose, and will serve to remind us of the War of the Roses, and that the white one was the winning color when Edward got the throne and dispossessed the Lancastrian dynasty. His uncle Richard had him murdered in the Tower. When you get the reins displayed upon the wall, this one will be conspicuous and easily remembered. It is the shortest one in English history, except Lady Jane Grey's, which was only 9 days. She is never officially recognized as a monarch of England. But if you or I should ever occupy a throne, we should like to have proper notice taken of it. And it would be only fair and right, too, particularly if we gained nothing by it, and lost our lives besides. That is not a very good lion, but Richard was not a very good king. You would think that this lion has 2 heads, but that is not so, one is only a shadow. There would be shadows for the rest of him, but there was not light enough to go round, it being a dull day, with only fleeting sun glimpses now and then. Richard had a humped back and a hard heart, and fell at the Battle of Bosworth. I do not know the name of that flower in the pot, but we will use it as Richard's trademark, for it is said that it grows in only one place in the world, Bosworth Field, and tradition says it never grew there, until Richard's royal blood warmed its hidden seed to life and made it grow. Henry Roman 7 had no liking for wars and turbulence. He preferred peace and quiet and the general prosperity which such conditions create. He liked to sit on that kind of eggs on his own private account as well as the nation's, and hatch them out and count up the result. When he died, he left his heir £2,000,000, which was a most unusual fortune for a king to possess in those days. Columbus's great achievement gave him the discovery fever, and he sent Sebastian Cabot to the New World to search out some foreign territory for England. That is Cabot's ship up there in the corner. This was the first time that England went far abroad to enlarge her estate, but not the last. That is Henry Roman 8, suppressing a monastery in his arrogant fashion. He is the last Edward to date. It is indicated by that thing over his head, which is a last, shoemaker's last. The picture represents a burning martyr. He is in back of the smoke. The first 3 letters of Mary's name and the first 3 of the word martyr are the same. Martyrdom was going out in her day, and martyrs were becoming scarcer, but she made several. For this reason she is sometimes called Bloody Mary. This brings us to the reign of Elizabeth. After passing through a period of nearly 500 years of England's history, 492 to be exact, I think you may now be trusted to go the rest of the way, without further lessons in art or inspirations in the matter of ideas. You have the scheme now, and something in the ruler's name or career will suggest the pictorial symbol. The effort of inventing such things will not only help your memory, but will develop originality in art. See what it has done for me. If you do not find the parlor wall big enough for all of England's history, continue it into the dining room and into other rooms. This will make the walls interesting and instructive and really worth something instead of being just flat things to hold the house together. The memorable assassination. Note, the assassination of the Empress of Austria at Geneva, September 10, 1898, occurred during Mark Twain's Austrian residence. The news came to him at Kaltenleucheben, a summer resort a little way out of Vienna. To his friend the Rev. Jos. H. Twitchell he wrote, "That good and unoffending lady, the Empress, is killed by a madman, and I am living in the midst of world history again. The Queen's Jubilee last year, the invasion of the Reichsrath by the police, and now this murder, which will still be talked of and described and painted 1,000 years from now. To have a personal friend of the wearer of 2 crowns burst in at the gate in the deep dusk of the evening and say, in a voice broken with tears, "My God, the Empress is murdered," and fly toward her home before we can utter a question. Why, it brings the giant event home to you, makes you a part of it and personally interested. It is as if your neighbor Antony should come flying and say, "Caesar is butchered, the head of the world is fallen." Of course there is no talk but of this. The mourning is universal and genuine, the consternation is stupefying. The Austrian Empire is being draped with black. Vienna will be a spectacle to see by next Saturday, when the funeral cortege marches. He was strongly moved by the tragedy, impelled to write concerning it. He prepared the article which here follows, but did not offer it for publication, perhaps feeling that his own close association with the court circles at the moment prohibited this personal utterance. There appears no such reason for withholding its publication now. ABPs. The more one thinks of the assassination, the more imposing and tremendous the event becomes. The destruction of a city is a large event, but it is one which repeats itself several times in 1,000 years. The destruction of a third part of a nation by plague and famine is a large event, but it has happened several times in history. The murder of a king is a large event, but it has been frequent. The murder of an empress is the largest of all large events. One must go back about 2,000 years to find an instance to put with this one. The oldest family of unchallenged descent in Christendom lives in Rome and traces its line back 1,700 years, but no member of it has been present in the earth when an empress was murdered, until now. Many a time during these 17 centuries, members of that family have been startled with the news of extraordinary events: the destruction of cities, the fall of thrones, the murder of kings, the wreck of dynasties, the extinction of religions, the birth of new systems of government, and their descendants have been by to hear of it and talk about it when all these things were repeated once, twice, or a dozen times. But to even that family has come news at last which is not staled by use, has no duplicates in the long reach of its memory.